And Afghanistan's second largest city of Kandahar fell overnight as the Taliban closes in on the capital of Kabul. Now the Biden administration is sending more troops in to get Americans out, just 2.5 weeks before the scheduled withdrawal of all U.S. troops. Senior foreign correspondent Ian Pannell has the latest.
This morning, Afghanistan reeling as around 3,000 U.S. troops set to deploy back into Afghanistan to help an emergency evacuation of some embassy staff and others out of Kabul, as the Taliban's grip around the country tightens. With up to 3,500 troops to be stationed in Kuwait on standby, officials refusing to call the deployment a combat mission or an evacuation.
Our job here now, with this additional plus-up, is to help facilitate the safe movement of civilian personnel out of Afghanistan.
This as the Taliban take key southern strongholds overnight. The country's second largest city of Kandahar fell after heavy fighting, the government releasing video of some of the clashes. And the key southern city of Lashkargah was toppled this morning. In just 1 week, they've taken at least 15 provincial capitals, including most of its major cities. This video, released by the Taliban, purport to show their forces taking key strategic sites. One shows fighters at police headquarters in Herat, the country's third largest city. The group also overtaking Ghazni, a key location on the road to Kabul. Most Afghan forces being overrun, either surrendering or defecting. Some fear the Taliban could take the country's capital in just weeks, possibly by the 20th anniversary of the September the 11th terrorist attacks.
Who would have possibly thought that 20 years on, this is where we would be ending up?
In greatest fear are those who stand to lose the most, the women of Afghanistan, a generation of girls who grew up with access to education and rights, now fearful the Taliban will once again take all of that away.
They know that everything that they know and they have gained with lots of blood and sweat and tears is at the verge of shattering should the Taliban come back to power.
And Ian Pannell joins me live now for more on this. Ian, the Taliban have seized 3 more major cities in just 24 hours. How is this happening so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, Tahan, let's just go back 24 hours when you and I last spoke. I mean, the pace of events is bewildering. It's hard to get your head around quite how fast it's happening and the meaning of it all, because every single hour, it seems, things just continue to get worse, and it looks like the Afghan army clearly just crumbled, as was always the fear, that they didn't have the stomach for the fight. The small, hardcore elements who were prepared to stand and fight were just not enough against the resilience of the Taliban. You know, the Taliban have always been ready to fight and die for their country. Taliban commanders have said, if we die, it's victory. If we win, it's victory. Well, good luck trying to fight that. It's almost impossible. And now Kandahar's fallen, Lashkargah's fallen. Seems to me there are now only really 2 major cities left. Mazar-e-Sharif in the north, which is a Tajik different ethnic group from the one which the Taliban is traditionally derived. They're mainly Pashtuns. It's mainly composed of a different ethnic group, and they have traditionally held out, but for how much longer? And then Kabul. You know, the Americans are now planning to evacuate almost all of their embassy staff. The British, the Canadians are doing the same, and Afghans aren't stupid. They can see the news headlines just like you and I can. The writing's on the wall. Anyone who can get out should now.
Now, how much time do you think those people have to get out? How much time do U.S. troops have to try to get them out safely? And what happens if Kabul does fall to the Taliban?
Yeah, I mean, both great questions. I mean, it's almost impossible to answer how much time. Nobody could have predicted the pace of the Taliban advance. I mean, given the current trajectory of events, you would think it's a matter of days before they're at the gates of Kabul. They took Ghazni, which is a city that lies just 80 miles to the south of Kabul yesterday, but they already control a district between Ghazni and Kabul. So a place that I've visited with the 10th Mountain Division, the US military before, that's now been in the hands of the Taliban for a long time. So they could be there very quickly. My own view, my guess, is that they won't want to take on the American military in that way. They've had everything go their way because they didn't attack the US military as they withdrew from the country. So I don't think that will happen. But August 31st is the deadline for that withdrawal to be completed, and you've got to assume that after that, all bets are off. Either the government surrenders, tries to cut some kind of final deal, or the Taliban just take over the whole country. And if they do, for the people of Afghanistan, this is going back at least 20 years. For the women and the girls of Afghanistan, this is going back 2 centuries.
And Ian, you know, it's in less than a month, we're going to be marking 20 years since 9/11. If Afghanistan falls entirely under Taliban control, how does that affect our safety here at home?
Yeah, and look, I absolutely understand why the mothers and fathers of the men and women who served say enough. It's 20 years. Our sons and daughters shouldn't be in harm's way anymore. For what? But you're right. That 20-year anniversary is coming up. And the 9/11 attacks were conceived and planned in Afghanistan. And what we're now seeing as the Taliban sweep forward is the recreation of vast ungoverned spaces. And the Taliban don't operate just on their own. They operate with Al-Qaeda. They operate ISIS also in the country. Other terrorist groups are also there. And there is a real danger that those ungoverned spaces reappear. The head of the British military, the current serving head of the British military, the equivalent of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, just this week warned that if Afghanistan fractures, there is a risk that extremism and terrorism returns, and that, of course, will pose a risk not just to the country, but potentially to the region. There is a severe risk there that it becomes a hotbed of extremism once again. And we're nowhere near being anywhere else in the region. We're not even in any of the neighboring countries because we didn't cut any kind of deals. We are hundreds and hundreds of miles away, and our ability to affect what happens on the ground has just disappeared. Is this Joe Biden's Saigon moment? I think the comparisons are unfair and unfortunate. But will he be remembered for having made a disastrous decision? I think the risks are very, very high.
All right, senior foreign correspondent Ian Pannell. Ian, thank you. And as Ian mentioned, the situation in Afghanistan is a major challenge for the Biden administration. The promise of troop withdrawal started with President Trump. But in early July, here's how President Biden defended his decision to deliver on that promise and pull U.S. troops out of the country by the end of August.
The likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely.
Now the Taliban is advancing much faster than the president predicted, but he maintains the Afghan people have got to fight for themselves. ABC's Stephanie Ramos has the latest. Good morning, Stephanie.
Diane, good morning. The administration at this point denies that they were caught off guard by the Taliban's swift advances, but it was just a little more than a month ago when President Biden said the Taliban overtaking the entire country was highly unlikely. But today, the rapidly deteriorating situation in Afghanistan is proving that's not the reality. President Biden avoided questions on this yesterday, but we're told that behind the scenes, he did meet with key advisors before signing off on that decision to send U.S. troops back to Afghanistan to help evacuate the U.S. embassy. One official tells ABC the Taliban gaining ground and putting pressure on major Afghan cities was a significant factor. The top Republican in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, who has previously opposed removing troops from Afghanistan, slamming Biden's decision overnight, saying the president's strategy has turned the situation into a global emergency, and the costs and ramifications will echo across the world. McConnell was also critical of former President Trump's plan to remove troops from Afghanistan. And this week, I asked President Biden if the Taliban's swift advances would change his drawdown plan. He said no, that the Afghans need to fight for their nation, but that the U.S. will remain committed to supporting Afghan forces with food and funds. Diane.
All right, Stephanie Ramos at the White House, thank you. And earlier on GMA, former State Department official and ABC News contributor Colonel Steve Ganyard talked about what he's watching out for in Afghanistan. Let's listen.
And this administration is saying this is not an evacuation, but is that really what we're looking at?
Michael, I think that the administration cannot be surprised that Afghanistan is falling, but they're certainly shocked at how quickly it's falling. And so that's why you're seeing this rapid buildup of military force to get enough people in to make sure that if Kabul eventually collapses, that we'll be able to get all U.S. citizens, all U.S. troops and diplomats out. So surprising, no. Shocking, yes.
And with the Taliban surging, you have thousands of U.S. troops who are moving in. It seems like a pretty dicey situation that's going on. What are the risks here?
It is very dicey. The risks are that Kabul actually collapses. So the administration had hoped that the Afghan government would be able to defend itself, at least in some parts of the country. But as the country continues to collapse, as after city surrenders to the Taliban, the next siege will be the siege of Kabul. And the administration certainly has the idea that they don't want another Tehran, they don't want another Benghazi, where they actually see the U.S. embassy overrun and U.S. citizens either captured or killed.
You definitely don't want that. And over a month ago, President Biden said it was highly unlikely the Taliban would overrun everything. Did the administration misjudge this situation?
They may have misjudged, Michael, the effect of the announcement that the U.S. was leaving. So candidate Biden and President Biden made it very clear that the U.S. was getting out of Afghanistan. So the real shock may have come when it was a definitive, we are leaving. And you think about if you're an Afghan troop out in the field, where your government does not have the support of the people, that effect on the morale of both the government and the people trying to defend may have been sort of the last straw and precipitated the eventual downfall of the country.
And we saw that President Biden didn't respond when a reporter asked if is Afghanistan lost? But in your opinion, is Afghanistan lost?
That, Michael, will be answered very soon. It could be weeks, it could be days, as Ian points out. But the rapid shock here of the decline and loss of these cities certainly puts the question in play.
All right, our thanks to Steve Ganyard for that interview.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.